I think the biggest advice I could give myself is to wear my helmet, right? Because I used to ride a motorcycle, and it was before we had helmet laws.
Oh, no.
and the reason why is because I think life is a series of risk. I am, by my nature, a risk taker. At that point in time in my life, I was riding around Southern California on a motorcycle without a helmet, making my mother crazy. I was jumping out of airplanes. I was skiing. I was scuba diving. I loved doing all that stuff. And I think life is a bunch of risk that we take. But I wish my 21-year-old self would take more calculated risk, protecting yourself from the downside. Ride the motorcycle, but wear a helmet, right? In case you fall, right? Maybe you're not perfect. And I think that's, a lesson that I've learned now. Now the risks that I take are different. But I think I've got a better understanding of what the downside risk could be and trying to mitigate those. And when I was 21 years old, I had no clue.
Welcome to Season 2 of the Amani Experience Podcast. In this podcast, you will experience wisdom, advice, and stories from creatives all over the world. Your host is the award-winning Amani Roberts, who is a DJ, music producer, professor, voracious book reader, and a skilled chef. On the show, we love to share the stories of creative professionals, especially people who have gone from the corporate life to the creative life. Once again, welcome to Season 2 of the Amani Experience Podcast.
Welcome to episode 93 of the Amani Experience Podcast. For this show, we have David Coe with us. David Coe is a real estate investor. Three of my favorite things about this show. First, David left a career in advertising to pursue real estate investing full-time, which I think is pretty cool. It's a cool story because he had a really nice job with a really high-end automobile account, so I really liked how he shared that story. Second is David's a survivor. He survived as a real estate investor the kind of meltdown, economic turmoil we went through in 2008, so that was interesting as well. Much respect to David. And then he's a family man and an awesome cook too. So I think you're going to love this episode. Remember, if you want to reach me, podcast at AmaniExperience.com. Feel free to follow me on all socials at Amani Experience. And don't forget to contribute to our Patreon. You can donate to the show, patreon.com/Amani Experience. Thanks again for listening, and to the show we go. Our guest today has a real estate team that is dedicated to helping each client manage their real estate affairs, one exceptional experience at a time. Real estate is not a property business, it is a people business. This guest team is structured to help his people gracefully navigate the process of buying or selling a home. Some people have complicated real estate transactions due to distress such as divorce, probate, loss of a job, or having to deal with an aging parent. Some people just want a bigger backyard or more cash flow. Each requires an experienced team of creative problem solvers with a serious arsenal of sophisticated tools. In our guest's spare time, he is a proud board member for the Redondo Beach Educational Foundation. He also co-runs Phoebe, the largest real estate investment club in Southern California. And I'm a witness, he is a damn good cook as well. I would like to welcome David Coe to the Amani Experience Podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We are excited to have you here. We do a geographical check-in, so tell us where we are right now.
We are in Redondo Beach, California on a beautiful 72-degree perfect spring day.
This is true. And where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, who I hear is having a very cold, rainy day today. That's my hometown.
And how did you find your way from Louisiana, New Orleans, to Southern California?
Well, first of all, it's New Orleans. I wouldn't, if we're going to be on a podcast, let's make sure we say this right.
Right.
So in the early 80s, my dad was working in the automotive business, and he was looking to get outside of Louisiana. He spent his time in the Marines doing boot camp out in Camp Pendleton, and always just kind of had a thing for Southern California. So one of the gentlemen that he worked with had a dealership out here, offered him a job, and we packed up our stuff and moved to Beverly, and we did not strike gold, but it's been great ever since.
So how do you compare Louisiana to California?
It's a good question. So I'd say Louisiana it's a southern town. I think there's only 3 truly unique cities in America, right? New York, San Francisco, and New Orleans.
Oh, okay.
New
You wouldn't add
Orleans,
DC to that list?
No, I would not add DC. Although it's certainly these days it's pretty unique.
Yes.
It's got its own culture, its own kind of music. The people are so friendly. It was a great place to grow up. I've got so many good memories of being there, but I absolutely adore Southern California, and I'm so glad I got to grow up here.
You've been here ever since. How did you become such a good cook?
So my dad cooked, and when we were kids, I had two parents that both worked. So my sister and I, every week we had to cook a meal, and for one night we had to cook and do the dishes, right? And every week I cooked a chicken and rice casserole, and my sister cooked tuna noodle casserole. So for years, my poor parents had those same 2 dishes every Tuesday and Wednesday night. But, I learned to be in a kitchen. My first jobs in high school were working at restaurants. And quite frankly, I just love to eat, and no one makes better food than I do.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's not true. But.
Okay. Well, you got skills, so I'll give you the credit there for sure. Where did you decide to go to college after high school?
Went to UC Santa Barbara for a year, and was very excited about becoming a computer scientist. Oh. I got through about 2 quarters of being a computer scientist and said, these are not my people, and this is not my jam. So actually went back to Cypress College. I had a kind of a year. I didn't want to just not go to school, so I took an advertising class at Cypress College, and just had a professor that I bonded with, super cool guy. Ended up going to Cal State Fullerton because they had a great marketing or a great advertising program, communications program. And, from there, that's where I started my career in advertising.
Great. So talk to us about you graduate from Cal State Fullerton. Shout out to the Titans. Of course,
Titans.
I teach there, and graduation is coming up in a month or so.
Nice.
What did you do upon graduation?
So part of my degree is I had to get I had to have an internship, and I had an internship schedule at this company you may have heard of. It's called Chiat-Day. They had this really cool building back in the day, binocular building in Venice Beach. At the time, I had a motorcycle, so I drove out from Fullerton on my motorcycle to Venice Beach, and I was hot shit. I worked one day, and then they let me go because they had to downsize their interns, and I was the last guy in. I was the first guy out, and I had an advisor at the time. I think he worked at Gray Advertising. I forget his name. And he's like, look, there's this other agency called Team One. You should work there. I'm like, I've never heard of Team One. And they're like, well, they're a division of Saatchi & Saatchi. You should work there. I'm like, all right, I've got nothing else to do, and I need this to graduate. So I went to Team One as an intern and ended up working there for 15 years.
Wow. And so you went Team One. When did you, after you were done with Team One, what was next after that?
Well, during Team One, I had 2 stints at Team One. So in the early 2000s, kind of late 90s, I got a job for a startup internet company. I was their director of marketing, which was a great gig until it wasn't. It was a Sony-funded company that Sony decided to stop funding. Okay. So I ended up going back to Team One, and then I got a job working at Chiat, lo and behold, 15 years later. And I've always kind of worked on the dealership business. So most of my career has been either working with Lexus or Infiniti on the account side.
Got it. What do you miss about working at Chiat-Day, if anything?
I do miss some things about working at Chiat-Day, and I just realized this about a week ago, and that is going to Laker games. Oh. It is the only thing I miss about working at agency. The perks of traveling and, getting to see cool events and going to sporting events. And, I became a very, very spoiled Laker fan for a lot of years there. I would only sit, in the lower level suites, not the upper level. Don't even bother me with your upper level suite tickets. Lower level only. Honestly, that's about all I miss. Yeah. And I shouldn't say that. The people were cool. Right. I met so many cool people there. Some of my best friends are still people that I work with, both at Saatchi & Saatchi and at Chiat-Day. I love the diversity of personalities in an ad agency. Yeah. I clearly was an account guy, and there were just so many different, super spiritual creative people and, very black and white planning people and all kinds of shades and colors. And especially at Chiat-Day, it was a huge mix mix of Los Angeles talent.
Yeah.
And it was fun being in that environment.
Okay, good. Now, if you were going to summarize yourself based on where you are today, 30 seconds or less, how would you summarize yourself?
Number one, family man. I've been married 25 years this May. Thank you. Going on a big trip next month to celebrate.
Cool.
I have a 19 and a 17-year-old, 2 boys that are amazing young men. They're teenage boys. They certainly have their stupid moments, but they're great young men. I've kind of redefined my career. I'm now into real estate. I love being in real estate. That whole axiom of do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Yes.
I'm a self-employed person. I always thought I'd be a terrible self-employed person. I'm a wonderful self-employed person. I love being self-employed. And I'm very active in my community. I'm active in my neighborhood. I'm involved in different foundations, and I'm involved in different nonprofits. And I am a total people person. I love to talk to people, and putting this microphone in front of me was the greatest thing you ever could have done for me. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. How did the switch from advertising to real estate investing, and Phoebe come to be?
So in 1995, my wife and I got transferred. I got transferred to Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
And we were living here in Redondo Beach, renting a house in Manhattan Beach. Didn't even think about buying a home. And one of the advantages of this job in Atlanta was the fact that we were going to get a chance to buy our very first house. So we moved out there. We found a place, cute little spot, downtown Atlanta.
Pre-Olympics too.
Pre-Olympics.
Yes.
1990. Actually, we bought the house in early 96.
Okay.
But it was, there was kind of this mass migration back into the downtown area around the Olympics. Mm-hmm. Atlanta's the ultimate white flight city, right? And then all these cooler, older neighborhoods kind of started gentrifying. And we bought our house in 1996 for $125,000, and we sold it 4 years later for $300,000. And some of that was just the market. Some of that was the fact that for 3 years, all my, single wife and I did, because we didn't have kids then. And that's truly when you're single, is when you don't have children. All we did was work on our house. We renovated every aspect of the house. We loved working on the house. We knew every single aisle of Home Depot that had every single tool. Nice. We built the coolest party deck of all time that will still be standing, even when the earth gets hit by a meteor. It was a little overbuilt. And then that experience was really where I kind of found our passion for real estate. We had made money in real estate. We loved the process of real estate. And when, my career was just time to be over in marketing and advertising, it was the only other thing I ever really wanted to do, was to be in real estate. And
that's how you kind of came to be. And how did you end up back in Southern California?
Got transferred back, so as, it was always meant to be like a 3 to 5 year assignment. And actually my wife is the first one to get a job. She worked for a company called US Web, which became March 1st. And they were one of the early digital shops this is in 1999, 2000. Even when we lived in Atlanta, Brooke was doing like these super cool video podcast on like 128K modem speed stuff. It was way ahead of their time. Yeah. But she got a job back here, and then I convinced them to bring me back as well.
We crossed paths in Atlanta. I was in Atlanta from May of 1996 to March or April of 97, working for Marriott downtown during the Olympics and after as well. So we crossed paths there.
Did we ever talk about the fact that we were actually about 50 yards away from the bomb that went off at the Olympics?
Both of us, yeah.
That's right, we did.
Both of us,
we were both there.
Yeah, and one of my colleagues lost a finger and a half. So
holy cow.
That's crazy.
That's another podcast right there.
Yes, totally another conversation. That'll be the next one, part 2. In your opinion, what's important for creative professionals such as yourself, myself, to succeed in today's business environment?
It's a good question. And I think unlike a lot of your more traditional creative guests on here, I think my creative passion is a little bit different. When I got out of marketing and advertising and started getting involved in real estate, I also got involved in the real estate investment club scene. And that's really my creative jam, right? I run a real estate investment club every single month. We're the largest real estate investment club in Southern California, and I run a chapter here in El Segundo, and then I'm part of the group that runs the club as a whole.
Got it.
All we do all day long is put on creative content, right? It's all based in the real estate investing or investing scheme, but I've been running our club now for 7 years, so constantly finding good things that are current, right? Understanding what maybe there's an appetite for, understanding what's happening in the market, and then curating it with people that are not talking heads real estate people that have either a passion for your money or a passion, just to be up in front talking to people. We really try to focus on real estate veterans, people that are involved in it on a day-to-day basis, and have them talk about what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So that process of doing that means I've got to meet a lot of people. I got to get to know a lot of different kinds of people. And that process is one that, not only do I use to run my real estate investment club, it's also what I use to run the rest of my real estate, interest that I'm involved in.
Exactly. In terms of investing in real estate, there's pretty much 2 or 3 different schools of thought, but a lot of people nowadays seem to be more averse to it because of fear, so to speak. They just don't really think it's as beneficial as it once was, especially kind of late 90s into the 2000s before the bubble burst. What's your response to that in terms of real estate investing, both for your own home and then for like investment homes as well?
So I would say that the ultimate angle on real estate investing, it's about supply and demand. Right. And while there's always different time frames of real estate, clearly at this point in time while we're recording this, we've been on a pretty nice run for about 10 years. But I still think there's some, supply demand inequities. For people that are looking to buy their first home, you probably don't want to buy that super nice, fully renovated home at the top of the cycle, right? There's really only one way to go from there, right? So people that are, looking to buy right now, we certainly talk about the idea of buying versus renting, but more importantly, buying something where you can add a little value to it, or buy a duplex where you can get a little income off of it. We still think that there's plenty of plays to make. I mean, in Southern California alone, we have a huge amount of a huge amount of demand, people looking for housing, and we're severely undersupplied. So I like, even though we're at the top of the cycle, that's a trend that's going to even be longer than a cycle. So being involved in creating housing is something that I also feel like at this point in time, even though we're late in the cycle, I still think there's all kinds of value to add to that.
Agreed. I agree with you. So thanks for sharing that. When you look at your career so far, what would you consider to be the turning point?
Well, honestly, the turning point was when I got involved with Phoebe. Right. So when my wife and I, decided it was time to make a move, and I think we're going to tell that story later. That was, we decided that we wanted to fix and flip houses. That was our thing. Like the house we had in Atlanta was our first flip. We bought it for $125,000. We put a lot of time and energy, not a lot of money, but a lot of time and energy into it, and we made this great return. And I think we knew we had some help from what was happening with the economics of the city, but I don't think that really sunk in. We started doing it out here in 2006 is where we kind of started it. By 2007, we were doing a few projects. And then in 2008, we got our teeth kicked in when, the whole world changed. And at that point in time, I was like, oh my God, there's something other than just making sure the paint is proper that we probably need to know about this. And started going to real estate investment clubs, hated the vibe of most of the clubs that we went to. And someone recommended that I go check out this club called Phoebe. And, it was more like a round table kind of environment. And it was people that were there not to sell you something. It was people there to talk and learn from each other. And I instantly fell in love with the concept. I really liked the people that were in the room. And the way I thought about it is I was going to these clubs. It was $20 a month. I basically got my master's degree in real estate over this 2-year period of going to these real estate investment clubs and talking about real estate with people that knew more about it than I did. And that's kind of when my perception of how to be involved in the real estate business, that was a major turning point for me.
Got it. And then continuing on that line, like, why do you love what you do?
The thing that I love today about what I do is I love the idea of putting a deal together. To me, that's the thing that I just get so much joy out of. And it doesn't have to be a real estate deal. I certainly love doing that. I think there's a lot of creativity you need to piece a deal together. But I honestly just love connecting people, right? Like I love connecting. One of my favorite stories I like to tell is my best deal that I did in 2018. I had a friend of mine that had 30 cell phones. He had like disposable phones that he had for a shoot that came out here. He had to find a home for. He was looking to sell them. And I have another friend of mine who actually collects cell phones. They take them and they refurbish them and they resell them. And the sale of one of these phones puts a child in Africa through school for a year.
Wow.
He has an association with a charity out in Africa, and he adopted his daughter as an African girl that he adopted. Putting that deal together, right, was I got so much pleasure out of that. The guy was so happy to get rid of the phones, and being able to help those amount of kids and receiving that number of cell phones, that was the best deal I put together last year.
Okay. When you think back to all the deals you've done, besides the one you just mentioned, what is maybe one of the most memorable deals, or maybe your first deal you ever did, the one that kind of comes to mind frequently?
Ooh, that's a good one. The one that comes to mind, my best deal is one that's still fairly recent. I'm currently involved in a project where we're building single-family houses up in North Hollywood.
Yes.
There's a thing called small lot subdivisions, and this deal has stretched me in ways that I've never been stretched before.
Okay.
I'm involved in different parts of it, and it's been a great culmination of the things that I've learned so far in my career, and the things that it's allowing me to learn so many more different aspects of real estate. So certainly that's probably been my favorite deal to date. I'd say, one of the best, the first deal that we did, we bought a little house actually was a condominium that was in the same complex that my mom lived in.
Okay.
And, we were able to fix it up and actually take it to the finish line and sell it. And we didn't make a ton of money on it, but we did it, right?
Yes.
And we were free, and we were no longer under the thumb of the man. And we would be dirty and dusty, and we'd eat pizza for lunch, and it was super cool.
All right. To leave such a prominent position in a company such as Saatchi & Saatchi, how were you able to gather the courage to make that switch?
So it was Chiat-Day.
Chiat-Day.
I was at Chiat, and
yes.
I was actually running the Infinity regional business for Chiat-Day. And during that time frame, Nissan moved to Tennessee. So Nissan, moved out of Torrance and moved to Nashville, and I was part of the team, for the first 2 years of doing that. There was a lot of miserable people in that move. People weren't thrilled for leaving Southern California to go over to Nashville. And from the client side, like a very small percentage of people went. So all of a sudden there were all these new people working for Nissan. Nashville was fun the first 5 times I went, right? the next 20, it's the same restaurants, the same, and all these miserable people, and, we're trying to do good work, and, it was just a toxic environment. We had a vacation. My wife and I went to Spain, and we were in Madrid. We had 2 kids, 6 and 4 years old. We're both, executives working in the marketing space. We got into Madrid and we took a nap because we were so tired, and we slept for 30 hours. Wow. So we missed a whole day of our vacation just sleeping. And we kind of woke up and we processed where are we? What's going on? And we were we can't keep living like this. This is not the life we want. I traveled a lot. I really got to, see my kids do the things that they were now starting to do because they were 6 and 4. And we decided we should fix and flip homes. And by the time we went that started in Madrid, by the time we got to Barcelona and multiple stops along the way, we had got, my first pro forma was on the back of an envelope from the hotel that I had unfolded and was running all kinds of numbers. They were all way off. They were terrible numbers.
Right.
But it made us think about how can we live differently? Like how can we do life differently? Let's do our own thing. And that was, the best aha moment we ever could have had.
Got it. For people who maybe are listening to your story and are like, I want to do what, David and his wife did, but are scared, what advice would you give to them to help them get through the fear?
Well, I would say the best thing you can do to conquer fear is education, right? And learning. And most importantly, it's meeting people. This is something we talk about all the time. The quality of investor you become is directly related to the quality of people you meet. Doing a good deal with a bad person will go way worse than doing a bad deal with a good person. And making sure that you're meeting good people and learning from good people, that's really the thing that, I think is the best tip I can give to someone. Certainly that's the purpose of Phoebe. Phoebe is meant to be, it's not a real estate investment club. It's a real estate investment community where people are giving back to each other, networking with each other. And, doing all of that before you start investing, I think is huge. That's the one thing we didn't do. It was us against the world. We got this, right? Like when we renovated our house in Atlanta, we literally bought a series of Time Life books that we still have upstairs. And that's how we learned to fix bathrooms and build decks and do flooring. And I wish we'd have gotten a little more involved in the community before we launched and started spending money.
Good. On the flip side, what is something that scares you?
Getting old, aging,
yeah.
We're kind of that sandwich generation right now. We've got aging parents on one side and, aging children on the other side. And, we're kind of like stuck in between, watching, them age, having them age us, taking care of aging parents. And, I think that's a big thing is understanding the system, right? And seeing the system in action,
right?
Being better prepared to be retired and being older is a major mission in our life right now. That's it's a little scary. It's expensive. It's not cheap.
Never is.
But we're making progress.
Definitely. That's an honest answer. Thank you. Your industry, the real estate investment kind of space industry, is very crowded. How do you rise above all the noise and distinguish yourself from the competition?
So again, in the context of the Real Estate Investment Club, our whole mission is about teaching people, educating people, and absolutely zero sales pitch are allowed. So for us, and when people find Phoebe, the first time they're there, they're waiting for the hand to come out, right? They're waiting for the hat to be passed around, right? It's Sunday at church, here it comes, right? And we don't do that. We don't treat people that way, and I think we're different that way. And honestly, that mentality, what makes me a great Phoebe chapter leader and a Phoebe, board member and Phoebe brand ambassador, is that's the way I am, right? I love giving back. I love connecting people. I love learning from people. I love teaching people. I love letting someone who can teach someone else, connecting those kinds of people together. And I think my personal branding that I'm building, it is about building, authenticity. It's about, becoming someone who's equally passionate about learning as they are about teaching. And really moving forward, it's really about attracting quality people. Like as your world grows in real estate, there's only so many things you can do. You have to start attracting people. Keller Williams has a saying that your vision has to be big enough where other people can put their vision into it. Nice. I really connected to that.
Okay.
So that's kind of my world now is I want to build a big vision where really talented younger people or older people that have a vision that can fit inside of mine that we can connect with.
Sounds wonderful. Great. How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours?
I do.
As you say that with much trepidation.
2008 was no fun, Amani. Let me tell you.
Hey.
As we were kind of building our career, again, we just didn't see it coming. We had a project that we probably could have sold and gotten all of our money back, but we were greedy, and we really wanted to keep going. Let's do this, and then the whole world changed, and that was something that was very painful, both emotionally, financially, and at the same time, it made me want to learn more about the space. I was maybe a little arrogant, and it made me reach out and start connecting and look at a different way to do it. Succeeding through others versus succeeding on our own was the lesson that we learned. But damn, those were hard years. Woo! 2008, 2009 were no fun.
Yeah, I remember in 2008, I had lived here for a year, so I had my own.
That's right around when you and I met, actually.
Yeah, exactly. I owned my place here. I owned a place in Silver Spring, Maryland, a place in D.C., and a place in Miami.
You were a baller, baby.
I was a baller. I thought I was a baller. I was quite over-leveraged, so to speak, and I just own this one now. So it is completely it was brutal. But
well, I tell you, I think over-leverage is probably a big lesson because we were very leveraged as well. That's how we had some savings for sure, but we really created a lot of leverage. It was very easy to get leverage in 2004, 2005.
Yes.
And the drugs were flowing everywhere, and everyone was a pusher.
Yeah.
And we took a lot of that money that we probably shouldn't have taken. And that was something that we've certainly learned about that. But, those were tough years.
Tough years, definitely. Now, as you acquire more success, make bigger deals, get to be exposed to more people, as Phoebe continues to grow and become stronger, you do acquire more critics, or haters as we call them. How do you handle your critics?
I think a lot of people look at what we do for Phoebe and they're like, why don't you monetize that? Right? Like that you're creating all this content. We've got, 30,000 members that are a part, are part of some kind of Phoebe club. We just expanded into Kansas City. We're looking at some other markets where we could expand in moving forward. And probably everyone that runs a Phoebe group loses money, right? And I think people are, that look at that, they look at it as a wasted opportunity. And there probably are some things we could do to become better at that, but it's not the purpose of Phoebe, right? Like we're not trying to make money out of it. We don't want people's money. We want their time. We want their experience. We want their participation. And, that has been the thing that we're different about. And, there are some other, real estate investment club people out there that probably look at what we're doing and think we're immature and they think that we're probably simple and could use some more polish, but that's our brand. That's who we are.
Stick to it. Tell us about the darkest time in your life, how you got through that, and what did you learn from that experience?
Well, a couple years ago, my dad got diagnosed with cancer.
Sorry.
And, when you get that diagnosis for a parent like that or for yourself, that's a really scary moment. As he was going through his journey of fighting cancer, he had about 2 years where he was, getting a lot of chemotherapy and, getting radiation and then thinking maybe we were good and then we weren't good and the cancer came back. And there was a lot of time that I spent with him, which was incredible time. We got to travel. He got to travel. The time that we were going through that was both wonderful time, but it was also, a lot of time that I wasn't spending as much time working in my business.
Right.
We weren't making as much revenue. And then we had a couple of other real estate, deals that we had been a part of that, started going sideways, and we had angry people. And everything just kind of collapsed all at the same time. So that was a time that was dark, but at the same time, it kind of made you focus on what's the next thing, right? Like the potential of what could happen, all the possibilities of what could happen sometimes drive you crazy. And you have to get beyond thinking about, well, what if this happens? And what if this happens? And what if this happens? And more like, this is happening. How am I going to deal with this? It kind of helped us to get centered, helped us to get focused. We started, punching back and worked our way out of it. Mm-hmm. But, there was certainly some dark times while we were going through that.
Yeah. And so can I ask, how did you, or how's the situation with your dad now? Like, how's all that going? Or
so he passed away about a year and a half ago, and lived a wonderful life.
Yeah.
He was just my dad was I'm borrowing this from a friend of mine who also recently lost his dad, and he described his dad this way, and I was like, oh man, that was so Walt. Walt was the guy that walked into, some people walk into a room and they look around and say, all right, who's here? Walt was the kind of guy that walked into a room and was like, I'm here. And instantly started
Yeah.
talking to everybody in the room. He just had this great way of bonding with people and connecting with people. And when he died, he had so many friends through our neighborhood and our community and his old work community
Right.
and his family. And, that was kind of his legacy. In fact, we're doing a crawfish boil, which
Yes.
you've been to
Many times, yes.
and we now call that the Waltz Memorial Pullman Lane boil.
Nice.
We named it after him. It was his idea. He's the one who wanted to do this thing. So there's been all days where you still think about him, but we now have a day a year where we'll celebrate his life and eat some crawfish.
Wonderful. Memorial Day weekend, if I recall correctly, right?
May the 26th,
Yeah, there we
Sunday
go.
Memorial Day weekend. We'll see you there.
For someone who has also lost a parent at a young age, and I was working in corporate America when it happened, but you were working for yourself. How were you able to manage not letting this major loss set you back and really cause your business to tailspin? Because that's tough. And you have to kind of manage the business at the same time. Like, how were you able to do that?
Well, we didn't do it,
Okay.
right? I think that was the thing. At least when you're employed, if you got an employer, and you get time away. The good thing is because I was self-employed, I could go take my dad to
Right.
get his radiation treatments every Friday, and we could go check in on them, my mom, and see how she was doing. She needed as much attention as he did at the time. It's tough caring for a sick spouse like that. So that was great that I got to spend that time. That's one of the things that I love about being self-employed is the ability to control my calendar. But it is also it's the downside of it as well is when you're not working, you're not creating revenue. And, so we never went into a tailspin, I would say. I think we always kept it. I do have a wife who's got a full-time job, which helps. But we kind of just had to refocus some energy and absorb it and take it and then take it one step at a time, right?
Yeah.
Let's just start going again.
Yeah, exactly. I have a feeling I know who the answer to this question is, but I want to ask it anyways. Who was the most influential person for you growing up?
Yeah, for sure. Walt was quite a guy. And again, I think the thing about Walt that I see the most in myself when I think about who I am now, it is that ability to connect with people. That was something that he was really good at, at a very young age, watching him work a room, watching, the way people felt about him, right? Everyone looked at Walter as this just, super nice, responsible, smart, caring man that, didn't have an evil bone in his body, treated everyone fairly, said a couple of off-colored things every now and then, but, had some terrible jokes. Walt was just such a personable person, and I really got a lot out of him from that. That's a big part of my personality, and not just him. I've got uncles and other family members, and being from the South, we're pretty friendly people.
Yes, you are.
That's still a big part of who I am as well.
Got it. What do you find easy to do that your friends find hard to do?
So I am a multitasker like no one else in the world. I think the thing that I've gotten better at being self-employed at one point in time where perhaps I was a little too scattered, I've learned how to link things together a lot better. I'm involved in a lot of different things. I've got my hands in a lot of different pies, but they're all connected somehow, some way.
Yes.
And that's probably been a thing that I've been able to do is stitch together my passions in a way that, I think works well. The ability to, work on something and then turn around and just start working on something else and not having to remember where I am or what we were talking about. Let's just keep going. I think is a skill that I have.
Yeah, that's a great skill. That's a future skill. Like most times in the past, people would say that would be a negative character trait, but that's not how the world is now. That's a good skill to have moving forward.
World comes at you quick these days.
Yes.
It's changing quickly.
Very fast. Speaking of that, what would you like to be better at?
So it's so funny when you wrote those questions because it's the same damn thing. I still look at the way I move like, I think that I am I need to become a better slave to my calendar. Right, like I'm very distracted by the next issue sometimes. And instead of working in a linear fashion, I tend to zigzag all over the place. I want to get better at building some barriers and building some firewalls that will allow me to focus and move from one thing to another in a more orderly fashion versus running around zigzagging, like an asteroid in a 1980s video game.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm working on.
What's the movie? Is it the movie Up when they have the squirrel when the guy comes? Yeah.
I'm a total squirrel, right? Hey, I will get you that right now.
Right.
And then the phone rings. And then all of a sudden it's like, 7 days later, damn.
When you were 21, were you at Fullerton?
I was.
So we're going to go back and talk to 21-year-old?
I was probably on my third junior year by the age of 21.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Third junior year.
Extended program.
Extended plan. 21-year-old David, based on what you know now, what advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
I think the biggest advice I could give myself is to wear my helmet. Right, because I used to ride a motorcycle, and it was before we had helmet laws.
Oh,
no. and the reason why is because I think life is a series of risk. I am, by my nature, a risk taker. At that point in time in my life, I was riding around Southern California on a motorcycle without a helmet, making my mother crazy. I was jumping out of airplanes. I was skiing. I was scuba diving. I loved doing all that stuff. And I think life is a bunch of risk that we take. But I wish my 21-year-old self would take more calculated risk, protecting yourself from the downside. Ride the motorcycle, but wear a helmet, right, in case you fall. Right? Maybe you're not perfect. Yes. And I think that's, a lesson that I've learned now. Now the risks that I take are different. But I think I've got a better understanding of what the downside risk could be and trying to mitigate those. And when I was 21 years old, I had no clue.
Speaking of lessons, what is the one lesson in life that took you the longest to learn?
I think the lessons in life that I'm still learning, especially being an entrepreneur, being self-employed, is accountability, right? That's something that I, am still trying to get better at, is being more accountable. In both my personal life and my professional life, when we don't have any constraints around us and there is no rule book, the self-discipline and of getting through everything. And I think, the way to do that is through accountability, and I'm still working on it.
Yes, you and me both. You and me both. Every great person has a sentence. What is your sentence? For example, my sentence is I love to help people unlock their creativity by teaching them how to DJ. What is your sentence?
Well, I may have already said it. Maybe I didn't. I guess the sentence is there's no I in real estate.
Oh, okay.
Right? And the way you do it successfully is by working with other people. You can't do it on your own. So to be successful, you have to find other successful people and work with them. So that's my sentence.
Definitely. You remind me of two things. I grew up in a family of real estate practitioners, both real estate agents, mother and father. And then also one of my favorite quotes is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
I love it.
Which reminds me exactly what you just said.
I love it.
Habits. What is one new habit you've added to your daily routine in the past year or so that has been most beneficial?
So being that I like to cook, right, because I clearly have no food allergies, right? One of the new habits that I've really started working on is tracking what I eat.
Oh.
Having to put down on my app what I eat every single time is still something that I'm working on and becoming a habit of doing, but starting to see the effects of that. Being accountable, right? Having that's my accountability moment, and I think that's a thing that looking for other ways of doing that. A couple of years ago, I wanted to do a New Year's resolution, right? So my New Year's resolution was that I was going to go a whole year and not drink a soft drink.
Okay.
And I made it a whole year without having one soft drink.
Well done.
Trying to find ways to set goals, and that's my latest accountability habit that I'm working on.
Love it. Which app do you use, and how has this app helped you specifically?
So it's called Noom. and you've probably all seen the ads on your social media, or maybe they just send it to fat guys like me. But no, it's part accountability, it's part tracking, it's part. There's a lot of information in the app that they send to you. There's someone on the other side. At least I think it's someone. It's either someone or a really smart bot that is telling me, encouraging me to do things. So it's been worth it so far.
Okay. Well, we'll link that in the show notes. Now, we're really big readers here on the Amani Experience podcast. Mm-hmm. So if there's 1, 2, or 3 books you feel people should stop what they're doing right now and start to read them immediately, what books come to mind?
So my book that I think everyone should read is The One Thing.
Okay.
It's a book written by Gary Keller, but it's not a real estate book. It's a time management book that's all about becoming focused. Like, what is your one thing? Like, we all need to know what our one thing is. It's the total 80-20 rule, where most of us spend 80% of our time on the things that make us 20% of our money versus the other way around. And the one thing really talks about how do you identify what your one thing is. Usually it's the thing that you're passionate about, and focusing your time and energy on doing that, and the other things that you're not, that's where you build leverage in your life. You do that through other people, you do it through hopefully good quality people, through partnerships somehow, some way, but really understanding and diving into what your one thing is, and then learning how to build your life around creating time for you to do that. I think that book does a fantastic job of helping anyone solve that riddle.
Excellent recommendation. Link that as well. What's been the best advice you've ever received?
Advice I've ever received? Well, I think it's to treat people fairly. And treat all people fairly, right? One of my favorite characters in history is Abraham Lincoln, and one of my favorite lines of Abraham Lincoln is he never met a man he didn't learn something from. Everyone has value. Trying to find someone's value versus see their inefficiencies. I think is a really important life lesson. Sometimes it's hard to not prejudge a situation or people.
This is true.
And which is an inherently human thing. And I think, being able to move past that at times and figure out where the value is in everyone and everything, I think is a really important lesson that I learned.
Great advice. Great advice. Now, you're a huge Saints fan.
I am. We're going to go here.
Well, no. This is going to be good.
Okay,
we're
good.
going to forget the past for current time. You're in the Louisiana Superdome. They're announcing David Coe is coming to the field. What song is playing?
Oh, all right. Well, I have to say the first thing that came to my mind, right?
Of course.
So my favorite Saint uniform is when we are on our black jerseys and black pants with the gold and white numbering. I think it's the best uniform in football. So my song would have to be Back in Black as I run out in my all black uniform.
We'll take it.
Yeah.
Good.
Make it loud.
All right.
Turn it to a loud.
Before I ask you the final question, tell us how people can find you online. Online, social media, all of that.
So our website is corealtors.com. That's from my real estate website. If you go to forinvestorsbuyinvestors.com, and that's for FOR, investorsbuyinvestors.com, you can find out information on the Real Estate Investment Club Phoebe. It's Co-Realtors on Instagram. It's David Coe on Facebook.
Good.
Follow along.
All right. We'll link that in the show notes. Before I ask you the final question, just got to say thank you very much for appearing on the show. Remember, I met you at our BNI meeting. I was a guest. You were quite friendly initially, which was challenging with that group initially because, it's a tough group to get in. But you opened up right away. You helped me a lot in the group. And then even as I've learned and making more real estate investments currently, been very helpful and just teaching me so I can tell that you mean what you say. So I really appreciate that and look forward to continuing to work with you on the investment side as well. And we let our guests kind of take us home with any last minute words of wisdom or advice. So I'll say thank you again and say, take us home.
Got it.
What else? Any last minute words?
My last one. Okay, good. I thought so. I was waiting for the music to start, right? I was all brought in, man.
Yeah. Talk to us.
Silver-tongued devil, you. I think that, my biggest life accomplishment is I have such a great relationship with my family and my kids, and being there for my kids and not being a, stay away dad and being involved in their lives is a one-time shot. And I think it's my biggest accomplishment. It's something that no one will ever be able to take away from me, is the relationship that I have. So family first.
Amen. Cool. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Amani.
Thank you for listening to the Amani Experience podcast. You can check out the show notes on amaniexperience.com/podcast. Feel free to email us at podcast@amaniexperience.com. Please remember to leave us a review on the platform you are listening on, and share this podcast with anyone you feel would benefit from listening. See you soon for our next episode.